All right, let's talk about some money here. So in this one, we're going to be basically getting some information from the user about how much they make, how many hours they worked, and we're going to tell them how much should be on their paycheck. So the first thing I'm going to do, I open up a new notebook file, and I'm just going to file a new save as. And on your desktop, you should have that Python unit that we created. If you go inside there, you should have all the packets laid out. And inside that, you should have lectures and Packet 1 challenge problems. So I'm gonna save it in there. And I'm gonna call this one shift wage. And remember, I gotta do that as .py because it's a Python file. Okay, cool. So already done with the hard stuff. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to ask what the username is right off the bat. So I'm gonna get the username from them. And the way that I want to do that is I want to use input. Remember, print just puts something out there. A lot of people think print because they want it to print for the user. But print is just telling you. Input is asking you. So I'm going to input, what is your name? And remember to put that space there on the back, because if you don't, remember how you like type and you're right next to the question mark? And that's a bummer. If you put that space and now you run it, oh man, so much better. Now you can say TED right there and we're all good. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to ask them how much they make. So there's a couple different ways to do this. I'm going to do hourly rate is equal to the input of, okay, capitalize, okay, first name, you earn an hour. So we're going to ask them how much they earn an hour, and you notice I dropped those little curly cube brackets. It's because I want to refer back to them by name. So I'm going to do dot format, and I'm going to put a new set of quotations right there, and inside that I put the username like this. If I want to double check that I spelled it correctly, if I double click on that, it should light up green in the previous spot. If I put user gnome right there and I do it, you'll see how it won't light up. That's a little signal to yourself that you spelled something wrong. Okay, so now I get that as an input. And I want to do a very similar thing like this for how hours worked. Let's do this. Now, how long did you work? And put spaces on the end of both of those. So now we'll have both those pieces of information. And something weird is going to happen here. And it's not going to give us an error right away, but I definitely did screw up. So if I say, what's your name? And you say, okay, Ted. Okay, Ted, how much you earn an hour? 7. And okay, Ted, how long did you work? I worked 17 hours. It's not giving us any error message. But watch what happens here with the next thing that we're going to try. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to multiply those two numbers together, right? Because if you work 5 hours and you make $10 an hour, 5 times 10, you should have $50, right? So I'm going to say your total wage then, all I have to do is multiply those two together. So there's going to be nothing wrong with what's going to happen in line 6. It's going to say hourly rate times hourly hours worked, right? So if I just multiply those two together, and this little star thing, it's above the 8. If you click Shift 8, that's the multiplication symbol for Python. Watch what happens when I run this. Control S to save it, Alt Shift F5 to run it. I say, okay, what's your name? Nick. How much you earn an hour? $10. How long did you work? 5 hours. I get an error, and it says that there's an error in line 6. Now, I promised you just seconds ago that there was no error in line 6. So what's going on here? What's going on here is you'll see they have this error thing down there that says str. It stands for string. So when you get an input from the user, Python doesn't know, it assumes everything's a string. And a string is just basically like letters or words. It's an input, but you can't do math to it. So strings are like your name, words, paragraphs, text, anything like that. The other kind of input is like a number, like an integer or like a decimal, things like that. And we have to let Python know that we're inputting a number like that so that it can free it up to do math on it. So it's a really easy fix, so that's the good news. Just right here, we just have to say, this thing, this whole big thing, right? It's just gonna be an integer, right? And this thing, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna put this int tag around it. Int short for integer, right? It's gonna be close to what we want. And you know what, I'm gonna print that off. I'm gonna print total wage off. And remember, you can print variables. You don't have to put the quotations around it. It's just gonna print off what that should be. I'm just gonna print that off and we're gonna see what happens here. So I said, what's your name? Nick. Okay, what do you earn an hour? 5. How long do you work? 10 hours. And I should make $50. So that works. Watch what happens when I do this though. What's your name? Nick. How much you earn an hour? $8.50. Ooh, $8.50. Now I totally want $8.50 as an input. But $8.50 is not an integer. So what I have to do is I have to change that from integer. So the way that it works for us to accept decimals is this thing called float. So now that'll totally work out that we can use decimals in that. Control S, Alt Shift F5. What's your name? Nick. How much you earn an hour? $8.58. How long did you work? I worked 11 hours. So I made $94.38. Not bad. We'll probably want some better, rather than just printing off total wage, I'm going to print off this. And I'm going to put the dot format here. So the first thing that I'm going to put in there is I'll write the whole message first. So the person's name. If you worked hours at dollars per hour, then you should have made dollars. So I printed this off. So I said, so the first curly cube bracket thing there, I'm going to put username. If you worked blank hours, so that's the total number of hours worked. So that goes second. The third one is dollars per hour, so that is my hourly rate. And finally, for a total of this, and I called that variable total wage. 5. What's your name? Nick. What do you earn an hour? I earned $11.71. Okay, Nick, how long did you work? I worked 200 hours. Yay! Awesome. Not bad. Not bad for a second program. All right. Later.